What's up again, everybody? Today we're back to this giant me version of the screen, and the giant me version of the screen is a little different because I do have, look, I have the ARMADA like Patreon list. You guys are fantastic. By the way, if you're a patron, you're fantastic. Also, patrons, as a side note, I'm going to be updating the deck list with a bunch of Road to Nationals decks, and so that you can access them more easily. Just don't have to go hunting around for them since you already have the document. You just pop, there they all are. I've also got a couple of CC decks of my own creation on there as well that are going live very soon, so check that out. Hey, I also have the, look at this, the sub now. Look, we're almost to 5,000. Hey, when we hit 5,000, we're giving away playmats. We're gonna give away playmats to people. Just like, whoosh, throw them everywhere. Just gonna throw a playmat, and hopefully it makes it all the way to your house, lands in the mailbox, just like in the commercial, right? Just like they showed in the commercial. Today we're gonna talk about a topic that I've been thinking about for the better part of a month. I started thinking about this topic, I forget what actually triggered it. I started thinking about this topic a while ago, and the more things that have happened over the past month with regards to Flesh and Blood or things like MetaZoo, stuff like that, like games coming out, games getting more popular, things being sold, all of these things have led to me really just wanting to sit down and make this video, and I've thought about this a lot. So today we're going to talk about 3 things I think Flesh and Blood could really benefit from committing to. If Flesh and Blood committed to these 3 things, I think that there would be a huge growth, continually huge growth in the game itself. Now, we've already seen, and if you haven't seen these, check out the video links as they pop up as we go. We've already seen Flesh and Blood and Legend Story Studios really commit to competitive play. And in fact, I'm planning on talking about this in a different video, but I would say that because they're committing so heavily to competitive play, we don't necessarily need to worry too much about the game's longevity this year. That's a topic for a different day in a video, but I with their commitment to competitive play for the foreseeable future, we know where this game stands with regards to a player base, and that is a huge thing. Now, as far as other things that they can do in other realms that they can dive into to support their game and to pull new players in, that's what we're going to cover. So with the first one, and this is not the most important one, perhaps it is, I don't know, it depends on really where your own personal opinions lie, but the first one is one that I think I've talked about previously and perhaps is underutilized, and that's the embracing of the Ultimate Pit Fight format. Ultimate Pit Fight is a multiplayer format where 5 or 4 or whatever number of people sit down at a table. They all bring a hero to the table, and you can basically play like a game of Commander almost, where you're playing multiplayer Flesh and Blood. It's very similar to multiplayer Magic the Gathering. You can attack people on your left and your right. You can't attack across the table. There's politicking, there's like arguing, there's backstabbing, that sort of stuff, right? I firmly believe that that format, while it does exist, is underserved, and if it were poured into more, would capture an entire new player base. The players that enjoy playing with friends, enjoy playing at a kitchen table, enjoy extended type formats that aren't only competitive. That's the kind of player that Ultimate Pit Fight appeals to. Because if you look at the way the formats are laid out right now, we have Classic Constructed, which is the pinnacle of competitive play. This is how you play the game to win lots of money. We have Blitz. Blitz is a fantastic intro format to the game. You pick up a Blitz deck. There are starter Blitz decks now with Monarch and going forward into Tails. You learn how to play the game with those Blitz decks. They run lower level tournaments with Blitz decks, and you can earn experience from those tournaments as well as some cool prizes. We have limited formats like Sealed and Draft, which mid-level tournaments will actually use as forms of, I guess, weeding out players. They basically run those formats in those tournaments to give you points and to give you decent cash prizes. But that's really just sort of all-encompassing a competitive mindset, minus the subset of players that would play Blitz just for fun to try out new decks. A truly casual sit-down kitchen table format is UPF. And if Flesh and Blood prints, or Legend Story Studios prints cards for that format, like we've seen a few already printed, but if they continue to print cards for that format, then that format is more enticing to players trying those cards. And I say that we've seen that already because if you look at the Crucible of War set, we had heroes, new heroes like Shiana, Benji. All of these can be played in Blitz, by the way. Kavdayan, Kaio. All of those are new heroes that only have young versions, okay? They only have young versions. Yes, by the way, you can play an adult version of UPF with everyone having 40 health. It's just going to be a long game. If you play it with young heroes, it ends up being a lot shorter of a game, and you can get more games of UPF in back-to-back. Even then, it still ends up being a good chunk of time. We've seen them print those heroes. We've also seen them print cards like Coax a Commotion. Coax a Commotion is a card wherein if the card hits, if the attack hits, then everybody does something, like creates a Quicken token or arsenals a card, things like that, right? We've also seen them print mentors in the most recent set, like Lord Sutcliffe, and Lord Sutcliffe actually deals damage to everyone at the table, arcane damage, if you meet his requirements, which is very easy to do, and that is a very fantastic card to put into an Ultimate Pit Fight deck if you can get it set up and that sort of thing. So those kinds of cards help people want to try out UPF, but if you just go for it, particularly using like a supplemental set like we've seen them do with Crucible of War, if you just go for it and print cards that clearly appear to function in UPF or really shine in UPF, like gadgety kind of cards, tricky kind of cards, those sorts of things that really look like UPF is their focus, then people will try them. Okay, the player that likes to innovate, that likes to tweak things, that likes to mess around with stuff, those players will get together, they will make UPF decks, and they will play. I think this is also tied to in-person play coming back. I think the more opportunity that in-person play has to return to an LGS, the more chances we have of seeing UPF become a highlight format for the game. But for me, that's number one. UPF should be highlighted in the game. Number two ties in heavily to number one. Number two also draws players to a new format. It also draws players to a more casual affair, but instead of everyone fighting each other, we have the idea of player versus environment, PvE. PvE formats would look like, 4 or 5 players sitting down at a table, maybe one person taking on the role of the antagonist, and everybody else teaming up to try and defeat said antagonist. Or it could look like one person, or really all people I should say, teaming up against an automated like encounter where there's sort of an automaton that's running and flip over the card of the deck, and then we have to deal with that, and then flip over the card of the deck, oh, it attacks me, that sort of thing. This does a lot of the same stuff as leaning into the Ultimate Pit Fight format. It's a very, very similar feel in the sense that it brings people together in a common interest in a more casual affair. And Flesh and Blood is, like I mentioned, very, very focused on competitive play. If they lean into the casual affair, then casual players will be more willing and interested and likely to buy up unlimited boxes to get the playable cards so that they can sit down with their friends, have basically a D&D session, but with Flesh and Blood cards. And this to me is a hugely important thing. Perhaps important is not the right word. Let me think. It is hugely influential on the game, or it could be. Its capacity to bring in a completely different player base because of the play style and because of basically what you're doing cannot be understated. That's perhaps the best way to put it. Because there are, and I'm sure you know, or maybe you are, there are millions of people that sit down with their friends and play Dungeons and Dragons, where everyone's on the same team most of the time. Everyone's on the same team most of the time. And you're all moving through a storyline together. And this can be accomplished in a variety of ways in D&D. You can roll dice, you can use just straight up movement tactics on a board, you can describe everything with your words. And in the case of things like Pathfinder, sometimes you have this hybrid version where you do actually have cards that you flip over. There's a Pathfinder like half RPG, half deck builder, which was kind of a cool, weird thing back in the day. It was like 7 or 8 years ago. I remember it released. Flesh and Blood can do exactly the same thing with a player versus environment mode. And if it did, it would be tapping into the D&D market hard. It would be tapping into it hard because you can play D&D and announce all of your attacks, like reading it off a sheet, or you could play D&D and have a hand of cards with all of your attacks and play down an attack. And it's the same experience, it's just experienced in a different way. And that is huge. In order to implement something like that, Legend Story Studios would need to sit down and either craft some sort of a storyline that you'd follow along with your friends, or just create individual encounters that you would then either assign someone to play, or you would have the automaton kind of play through yourself. Either way, that is something that would pull so many people in, perhaps even more than UPF, even though I do think UPF is more interfaceable with card gamers, like people that play card games. They understand like a multiplayer format, whereas PvE really draws on that RPG lover. The game is already so set up for RPG play. It is so set up for RPG play that it's just not even funny. The characters are so iconic. Each of them are so unique. Their play style is so unique. You get a party together. You go beat up some, random encounters that you could maybe, purchase as a group and play through and deal out rewards, or like a box set. You literally just, as Legend Story Studios, put together a box set of 20 encounters with a little stitching of a story together in between each one, and all the players, can get one box, sit down, play through the encounters, play through the campaign, telling the story as they go. That would be fantastically cool. I can't imagine it would be terribly hard to implement. I would love to see them do that. I would love to see them do that. Which brings us to our third point. And this, in my opinion, is the number one point. I think this is the most important thing that Legend Story Studios and Flesh and Blood can do. And it's not related to playing the game. And you can argue with me on this one. I'm totally fine with hearing your perspective in the comments. I could be wrong. Maybe this is the second most important. This is not related to marketing distribution. Well, I shouldn't say that. It's not related to distribution. It is related to marketing in this sense. It kind of ties into what I was just saying. Flesh and Blood is a game that has been so thoughtfully created with the heroes, their backstory, their playstyle, their motivations, their abilities, their aesthetic, everything down to even the bordering of their cards is thought of. And all of those things have just a layer of polish and aesthetic to them. So if we take those things and we implement them like they've done, and you introduce that to a wide community of people from all different backgrounds and play styles and other games, you start to see people, as they interface with these heroes, pick up a hero and just totally sell out for a hero or a class. Totally buy in completely, love the thing that they're playing, love the class they're playing or the hero that they're playing, and they main that class, right? You see people, when Monarch released, people were like, I am a Prism main. It does not matter what comes out. I will be playing Prism. I will be playing Light Illusionist. And you saw people, and this really hit hard in Arcane Rising. If you were around when Arcane Rising dropped, people were like, there is a Ranger, and by God, I am playing Ranger. Ranger is all I'm playing. Azalea is life. She is all that I need. I will play Ranger, or Warrior, or Guardian, or Brute. I am a Brute player. I don't play anything else. My name is Ian, and I only play Brute. Okay, except that one time he played Azalea. But a Brute, that is what I do. If people are so passionate about the class or the hero that they play, they're going to, the next logical step, they're going to want to show their passion or their excitement or their love of that class or hero in other ways. And this is something that I wanted to make a video on this exact topic a month ago, and I just waited because I thought it'd be more interesting if I had more than one topic. This is the topic that actually sparked me wanting to make this video. Flesh and Blood desperately needs to market those things outside of the game. And what I mean is merchandise, t-shirts, sleeves, card sleeves, bags, backpacks, give posters, give people the ability to show what they love to others in the card game, and they will do that because you, as Legend Story Studios, have created something that is so good, is so quality, and is so already beloved. If you started providing a Prism poster, literally just a Prism poster, and people could buy it so that they could put it in their wall, I would have already bought it. Okay, this is from an LGS. This is from Reaper Game Store. He gave that to me. It was very kind. He gave a couple of other people at one of his recent events posters like that. If Legend Story Studios was like, sweet, I know people love Prism, can we just get like a poster, and it doesn't matter the price, let's make it cheap. They can buy it, they can put it up. People will do that. I would love a t-shirt for some of the heroes, or even some of the designs, like the Pitch 3 design on a t-shirt would be fantastic. Those kinds of things, like big fans of the games would happily embrace. And there's a way to do it right, yes, and there's a way to do it wrong, yes. I agree with you. If you're saying that, hey, that just seems like a cash grab, sure, they can do it in a way that looks like a cash grab. They could do it in a way that is a cash grab, I should say it that way. But they can also do it in a way that allows players an ability to pick up something of value to them that shows their allegiances. And this all started, I remember now, this all started because I was listening to a podcast about the old Legends of the Five Rings game, a game I never played, a dead game, a game that was popular in, I think it was like the 90s, branching all the way up. Nah, yeah, it was like 90s something or other. Anyway, I never knew about this game until I started getting into card games, and then I saw Legend of the Five Rings. When it was first released, people were 100% sold out on characters and the clans that those characters made up. People like bought into clans, they made their own shirts, they repped them at events. Clans would fight other clans, and that would affect the storyline of the card game. And all of this led to people just being ravenous, passionate fans for their clan, for the cards, for the game. They sold out. They sold out for that game. And there's nothing that says Flesh and Blood can't do the same thing, because it has exactly the same bones. It's got really cool heroes that are very unique, that have good story. There's a good story tied like together within this world that Legend Story Studios is actively creating. There's no reason why they can't put out shirts or merchandise, or they can't do things like Legend of the Five Rings did. And I think that is the number one thing that Flesh and Blood can do. Let me know what you think about this in a comment below. I've thought about a lot, like, with regards to these things. There are more things that they can do to grow the game, and I think the game is in a fantastic spot, particularly if you are a competitive player that wants to dive deep into it, and supporting the other players alongside of that competition, I think is very, very wise. Let me know what you think in a comment below. As always, everybody, thanks for watching.